Okay, so now I want to talk about other stuff that was going along with during the times of the super soldier memories. These are outside of the military stuff that was taking place, but it was occurring at the time that it was taking place. A little rundown of the story to be familiar with it, if you're not familiar with the super soldier story, is that I started boxing in high school my sophomore year. My senior year, I was still boxing and was in a military guy's class um, named Kevin Dixon. And I was goaded by another student into saying that fighters were better than military guys. Well, he went ape shit and and the kid told him where boxing was at, and he showed up in the next boxing class while me and my sparring partner was sparring, and told coach he had no right to be there. Coach ended up having to start paying rent, and after that, one or both of them went to another teacher of mine who had told me that her husband was 30-year military. And between the three of them, my boxing coach, my chemistry teacher, and my English teacher, the woman, I ended up under mind control and going to military bases and ended up in combat. Um, that happened in high school. In college, I went. All of this occurred whenever I went out with fighter's eyes, and fighter's eyes are basically eyes fighters get, and your eyelids droop a little bit more than normal or something and stuff. They look distinct. You can tell when you see them that you're what you're seeing if you know what you're looking at. But they wreck your memory at the time while you have them. You have no memory while you have them. My memory span was like 5 minutes long. You could tell me a number to remember, get me to talking about something else, and then 5 minutes later, ask me to tell you the number you had me remember. And not only wouldn't I remember the number, I wouldn't even remember that you told me to remember it. So I was operating with no memory, kind of like the Memento movie. I don't know if you'll be able to find that. You'll probably find a torrent of it on the Pirate Bay or something. But anyway, and while you have those eyes, you have no memory of anything that's going on while you have them. And when you get rid of them, you have no memory of anything that happened while you had them, or that you even had them. So it's like you have a blank spot, like a missing time there in your life, where you have fighter's eyes and shit happens, and then you get rid of fighter's eyes, and you have no idea that anything that you don't know about that happened. Um, so it's like missing time in your life. And one of the things that causes those eyes to last longer and not go away, the main thing is having sex. And so I went out of it for a while with fighter's eyes in high school, which allowed all of that military stuff to happen. And then a few years later, when I went to college in 2003, right after the Iraq invasion, it started again, and I went out of it with fighter's eyes again. And everything that I remember, the whole story is in the Super Soldier video as far as how that went on. But what I'm going to talk about now is the things that occurred outside during this time frame when I had fighter's eyes, but outside of the scope of the military related stuff that was going on. One of the things that was going on in high school, so I'll start with my high school stuff and then I'll progress to the college stuff. But what was going on in high school was Sandy Washman, her husband was having me trained in military stuff outside of class, and she was seeing me. I guess we were dating, if you could call it that. But and she was showing up at different places with me, particularly at McDonald's and Walmart, mainly McDonald's. My boxing coach, Ray Johnson, and my chemistry teacher were always there when we showed up. It turned out, and I was getting into a lot of fights outside of school during this time. I got into some fights with some football players, and from what another memory during my college years, some guy said that the coach's other fighters had to fight the football team because of me. Not because they were worried about me, but because they was worried about the football team, actually. And with the story behind that was that I had broken a couple football players' jaws, and they got benched, and the football team started losing. So they were mad at me, and they wanted to fight me. But the coach's other fighters didn't want the football team in a fight with me, so they fought the football players, and then I had to fight them. But anyway, so that's one of the things that was happening in high school. Another thing was that there was this little kid, and there was these karate kids that was always screwing with him. They were ganging up on him and knocking him down and bullying him around. They were doing this in front of their karate instructor, and he was encouraging them to do it while they were in front of him. His name was Brian Newton, and he ended up working for the juvenile detention center later on, and then became a cop. Now he's like their investigator at the police department. Anyway, from what I remember about that time, and additionally, his sister married a guy that was a coach for my boxing coach's boxing club, incidentally. Later on, not at that time, but later on in the past several years or whatever. I don't know how long they've been married, but they were married, and I don't even know if they still are or not. But anyway, so what was happening at that particular time was that this karate instructor named Brian Newton was encouraging his karate students to gang up on other people in groups and bully them around. First, from what I recall, it started with this little kid, and I was protecting him from his karate students. I got into a fight with several of his karate students, and I remember a few of them getting killed, like literally like dead killed, like rigor mortis dead killed. And then there was evidently there was a cover-up of that, and I never went to jail. But I remember killing a lot of people in this community and never went to jail for any of it. It was all covered up and swept under the carpet. But anyway, so I remember that, and it started with that. And the chemistry teacher in my high school, Kevin Dixon, from what I recall, Kevin Dixon tried to fight this karate instructor, and Kevin Dixon got his ass whipped, he said. And the karate kids started ganging up on my coach's other fighters. They wouldn't fuck with me. They learned their lesson doing that. But they were ganging up on my coach's other fighters. And I guess that got Coach involved eventually. And he went and had a talk with this Brian Newton character. And after that, Brian Newton, I don't know what they talked about, but it must have been a hell of a talk, because after that, Brian Newton shut down his karate school, and he never taught karate to a bunch of teenagers ever again that I know of. Anyway, that was kind of what was happening somewhat in high school. There's not much to say about that. I remember being at a Ranger indoctrination program and possibly Special Forces assessment and selection. I don't even know. I just know one person saying I was at Ranger indoctrination program and another person saying I was in North Carolina during this period of time. So everything, and all of that is detailed out in the Supersoldier video. In college, just before college, a friend of mine who had been in the military told me about the Illuminati. I had graduated in May of 2000, and 9/11 happened in September of 2001. So I was just a year from graduating high school, and I was watching the news reports, and something about it didn't seem right. So I talked to my friend. He was an older guy, had been in the military, and I think he got a dishonorable discharge for going AWOL. Um, but anyway, I said, there's something about 9/11 that just doesn't seem right to me. He said, that's because the Illuminati did it. And I said, what's the Illuminati? He said, well, you're kind of a smart guy and you got the internet. Go home and read about it. Uh, he said, don't believe in it just because I believe in it, but do the do the research and come to your own conclusion, or something like that. Um, so that started a year long, really a 7 year or so, a 7 or 8 year long process of me reading about the Illuminati and studying like what they call revisionist history, I guess is what they call it. But things that wasn't written in the history books. Well, around 2003, then that was in 2001 that I'd heard, like right after 9/11, sometime like a month or two after 9/11, that I'd heard about the Illuminati. Then in May of 2003, and I was studying this from that time on. Around May of 2003, I went to college. There was a college campus that opened up here. It didn't have an actual campus. It was being hosted out of the top floor, out of a bank, and out of, for some of the classes, and at the high school in some of the classes, in some of the classrooms for some of the classes. They didn't even have an official campus yet. It was kind of a new upstart thing. Now they do have a campus. But anyway, I was always at odds with my teachers in certain classes, particularly history class and particularly government class. I had gained enough knowledge that I knew that I was being lied to in these two areas, and I was always at odds with the teachers. Well, one of the teachers, I was in a classroom with a philosophy class. The dean of the college taught several of the courses. She taught history, philosophy, or not his philosophy, history, psychology, government. I think she taught science and some other stuff. She was like a real Renaissance woman, I guess you could say. But anyway, she taught a lot of the classes. But this particular class, this particular time, was psychology class, and there was a redheaded woman in it and her daughter, her teenage daughter, and I don't know either of their names, but there was another girl in there named Stacy Nelson. She went on to kind of be famous. Her name now is Stacy Felker. She's kind of famous for marrying somebody kind of famous. Her husband is a country music star. Somehow she's connected to back to my boxing coach. He denies knowing her now, but they're connected. I think that's his daughter, honestly, is what I think, because they look a lot alike. I think that, and her father, Randy Nelson, I think raised her, is what I think, but I'm not real sure about this. But anyway, I was convinced that I loved Stacy at the time. If you'd known her, if you'd seen Stacy Felker when she was 17 years old, she was a pure goddess. I mean, plain and simple. If there ever was an 11, she was it. I mean, she was, oh my God. But anyway, I was convinced that I loved her at the time, and she knew about my eyes, and she was teaching all the other girls how to trigger my eyes and shut down my memory. And they were sleeping with me as a result of that. I ended up in some kind of I ended up being sex trafficked, essentially, between two women's houses, the redheaded woman and her teenage daughter, their house, and my history professor's class. The history professor's name is Kelly Stewart. She no longer teaches history at the college, but there is a Kelly Stewart that is teaching history at the middle school. They might be the same woman. I don't know if they are for sure or not, but they may be. I don't really know. But anyway, so at first I was sex trafficked to the redheaded woman's house. I was her daughter's live-in boyfriend, and her daughter was acting as my handler, at the time all of this was happening. Well, evidently, she was keep getting me around, taking me to McDonald's, and making me and when I'd get to McDonald's, I'd do the rest about getting myself around, sleeping around. I'd go hit on all the girls, and anyway, it turned out that I was sleeping with a lot of girls. And I'm not bragging about that. Don't think that I am. That's not bragging. It's just what happened. From what I recall, there was at least four females pregnant at the same time, and I don't know any of their names except for Stacy Felker. Evidently, she was pregnant at the time, and talking to her dad later on, she wanted it to be her boyfriend's, and her dad wanted it to be mine because I had better genes, according to her dad. But anyway, so as this was going on, I was really extremely political because of the Illuminati stuff. Up until that point, I hadn't been political at all. Until I started learning about the Illuminati, and then I got extremely political. I found out that on my political leanings, I lean more to the left than I do to the right. And so I was anti-government. Everywhere I went, whenever I had fighter's eyes, I was running down the government and Republicans everywhere I went. And during this time, the Republicans, I had come across a documentary on Fox News, which was the main Republican news channel at the time, and it was called Rupert Murdoch's War on Journalism. And I watched it, and I honestly didn't think Fox News could be that bad. I mean, I really didn't. I mean, it shit all over Fox News bad. I didn't think it could be that bad. But at the time, I noticed in conversations everywhere I'd go, I'd be out in public, and I would hear in one place one Republican saying something, and then I'd go to another place and I would hear another Republican saying the exact same thing in the exact same words. The exact same thing, the exact same words. And I noticed that they were using the same word in every other sentence. And I had no idea where this was coming from. And then I saw the Rupert Murdoch's War on Journalism documentary. And that got me to watching Fox News because I thought, surely it can't be this bad. So I started watching Fox News. It would piss me off pretty bad because I was really far liberal at that time. But I would watch it anyway. And then I come across this guy's show, The Factor, by Bill O'Reilly. And I realized that these Republicans were repeating him word for word. And so when I went out of it with fighter's eyes during this particular time and was talking shit on the government and the Republicans and everything, I was also baiting them into a political discussion. I would watch The Factor and know what they was going to say exactly, word for word, on particular topics. And I would think about this was the smartest dumb thing I ever did, to be honest with you. I say it was smart, but it was dumb because it burned a lot of bridges in the community. But what I was doing was watching Bill O'Reilly's show, and I would pick out, and he had these talking points that people was repeating, and I would pick one or two a night that was easily debated, easily refuted. Like I could come up with an argument against it, and you couldn't counter my argument. It was just solid. And so I would bait these people into this political discussion. I don't know how I would start the conversation, but I knew by phrasing by talking in the certain way that I was talking about the topic that I was talking about, that they would deliver their talking point, a talking point, the one that I knew that they would deliver, and then I could counter their talking point, and prove that they were completely fucking retarded. And after I did that, I would tell them that they thought they was so smart because they could repeat somebody else's opinion word for word, and that they didn't have the intellect to be able to formulate an independent thought. Basically, I called them stupid. By doing this, by running down the Republicans and the government everywhere I went, talking about the Illuminati and pedophile rings and all this, basically the deep state that Trump was talking about. I was talking about this 20 years ago. But everybody thought I was crazy and got pissed off at me for talking about it because I wasn't rich. When you're rich, people put up with your bullshit more than they do if you're not. And somehow people evidently think that rich people know things, know everything. Like if you're an average, ordinary person, you can't have a sensible opinion on anything. But if you're rich, by God, everybody listens to your opinion. You must know everything. I don't know what it is, but anyway. But I was talking about this deep state long before Trump was talking about it. And it pissed people off in the community, and they started fighting me everywhere I went. It would start out, the girl that I was with, the redheaded girl, whose name I don't know, would take me to these places, these businesses like McDonald's and stuff, and I would be running down the government and the Republicans because I was mad. I was just completely mad about everything at that particular time in life. And I would make other people mad as a result of what I was saying. And they would attack me and swing on me and throw the first punch. Well, having a boxing background, and here's a boxing trophy, and here's my old hand wraps from my boxing, just to prove that I was a fighter. Having a boxing background, basically nobody could really touch me. I mean, I had airtight defense. Nobody could break my defense. So, and it would start out, I would be fighting one guy, and then another guy would join in, and then another, and then another, then another. And eventually I was fighting 5 guys at one time. 4 or 5 guys at one time. And that sounds more spectacular really than it was, because they joined at different times and were attacking me at different times, and they were getting knocked down at different times. I was only ever fighting 5 guys one-on-one. I was fighting them one at a time. Even though I was fighting 5 people, I was only fighting them one-on-one. Had they have had the foresight to wait to attack me all at the same time, I probably would have been screwed. But lucky for me, they weren't that smart. But it started out like that, and then it progressed to people attacking me with weapons, knives, guns, baseball bats, and stuff like that. I didn't know more than have to go into a place at that point, for just walk in for people to start attacking me. It got that bad. And I would leave a place, and then with first the redheaded girl, and then with my college professor, Kelly Stewart, after the redheaded woman had finished with me and her daughter, they handed me off to my history professor, and I became like a live-in boyfriend or whatever with her. Essentially, I was being raped and sex trafficked. A kid in one of my classes turned them in. He told the redheaded woman and my history professor was talking graphically sexually in the room. All the way across the room. The redheaded woman, I was sitting in the very back of the room, and the redheaded woman was sitting in front of me, and the teacher was in the front of the class, and they were talking graphically about what the college professor was doing to me sexually. And one of the kids said that he knew that what they was doing was raping me, and if they didn't stop, he was going to turn them in. Well, he did turn them in. And eventually, those females, all of them, some of them, probably not all of them, ended up down at the Woodward County Jail in Woodward, Oklahoma. And they all had to spend some time in a jail cell. And I know this happened for a fact because I caught the jail administrator at the time in the parking lot of a grocery store, and I was asking her about that, and she said she remembered a bunch of girls hovering around her desk, which was a confirmation of some of the stuff in my memories. But anyway, first it started out with the redheaded girl, and then it evolved into the college professor. Basically, I was being raped and sex trafficked is what was happening to me. And the military was using the eyes that I had to use me as a super soldier, a soldier under mind control that goes on a mission and comes and is brought home that doesn't remember the mission they just went on. I was being used as a super soldier. And the redheaded woman and her daughter was at first my handlers, and then Kelly Stewart, the college professor, became another handler. So I'm not going to tell you all the fights that I remember getting into, just other than just telling you that I got into a lot of fights, and some of them were pretty bad. I would play around with people generally until people got even dumber than what they were being and pulled out a weapon, a knife or a gun or something like that. And then I used the military kill techniques that my grandfather had taught me, having served in the Air Force back in the 50s. He had trained me a little bit, and I used the military kill techniques he taught me that they don't teach the people in the military anymore because people were out using them. They were effective, and people were out using them, so they stopped teaching them to people. But anyway, I would use these military kill techniques on these people and lay them out dead. And I never heard anything anymore about the story. It was all covered up. Everything I've ever done, killing people and all that, it was all covered up. Nothing ever resulted from it. But years later, my grandpa told me that all the people down here in this town was scared of me, likely because, and I didn't have my memories back yet, so I didn't know what he was talking about. But he said that everybody down here was scared of me, and I can see why after the memories that I got in my head of what was going on at that time. If I would have seen me back then, I would have been scared of me too. But that's kind of like the Supersoldier Addendum. That's what was going on in addition to the stuff in the Supersoldier video at the time that was going on. So anyway, basically the dreams and the visions, the paranormal occurrences that was happening, the Supersoldier memories, this particular video, the mind control video that I posted, all of it's all related. It's all my life. And I just decided that it was time for me to open up and tell it, because nobody's going to tell your story but you. So I had to finally tell my story.